On the 1st of December 2018, the night before her 22nd birthday, Grace Millane, who came from Essex, England, set up a Tinder date. The following day, Grace failed to answer any of the many birthday wishes that came from her family and friends. At the time of her Tinder date, Grace had been backpacking across New Zealand. By the morning after her date, she still hadn't returned to her hotel. Shortly after Grace was officially announced as a missing person, a man named Jesse Shane Kempson was summoned to a police station for questioning. Kempson was none other than Grace's Tinder date, but it turns out that he shouldn't even have been walking the streets. Now viewer, if I've got you hooked on the story so far, do subscribe, give the video a like, drop a comment when you're ready and donate. Hit the thanks button below, I'll appreciate you. Jesse Shane Kempson was born on the 28th of December 1991 in Lower Hutt, New Zealand. After his parents split up, Kempson was raised for a while by his grandparents. In 2011, after spending some time in Australia with his mother, Kempson returned to Wellington, where he'd also done some of his schooling prior. At this point, when Kempson was 19, the impact of the quote, various traumatic experiences, unquote, that Kempson had as yet lived, but whose details aren't publicly known, began, arguably, to unravel. One of Kempson's former landlords reports that Kempson claimed to be a professional softball player who'd been freshly signed up by New Zealand's national softball team, the Black Sox. On falling into arrears, Kempson would, relates the landlord, forever tell him, "Oh yeah, my contract money is coming, my payments will come then." Black Sox told the landlord that they hadn't even heard of Kempson. The landlord never saw a penny of the $700 that Kempson owed him when he subsequently did a runner. Kempson scarpered when his landlord told him that his cover was blown. Kempson next told people that he had a bachelor's degree in international law and came from a family of millionaires who were looking to buy a top restaurant in Auckland's Viaduct Harbour. His millionaire family owned a chain of restaurants in Sydney, Australia, he claimed. It was this very story, in fact, that he told the ladies who were living in the next flat share that he joined. But the thing is, one of the ladies knew a restaurant that Kempson claimed that his family was about to buy. She knew the restaurant owners, in fact, and she knew that they weren't selling. And she actually went to that restaurant one day and found Kempson working behind the bar. And the second he saw her, he ran out of the restaurant and never went back to work. I can't tell you what happened when Kempson subsequently got back to the flat and came face to face with that flatmate of his again. What I can tell you, however, is that when Kempson moved out of his flat share in Auckland, his three flatmates, all professional young women, were massively relieved. Having initially behaved with charm and warmth, Kempson had shown his true colours as a pathological liar and a serial fantasist. Kempson claimed to be an All Blacks rugby star, an oil executive and a gang member. He said he had cancer and that his parents were dead. His own stepbrother later affirmed that Kempson would lie for nothing and then keep lying until there was no way out, and then break down into tears and run off. I believe that, for the most part, Kempson wanted to be seen and respected as a success. Even so, as a non-expert, I can't answer why Kempson told lies about his job and his family background that could so easily be uncovered. I personally see his endless lying as an indication of profound immaturity on his part. Young children often tell tales to impress their peers. I also think that he believed that he could, in the event that any of his lies were exposed, either bluff his way out of the situation by telling new lies, or just afford not to care if he couldn't. This includes the scenario of murder and rape. Only Grace wasn't who Kempson raped. 8 months before his date with Grace, Kempson had a date with a young British tourist. When he forced himself on her, he warned her, quote, "If you don't do this, I will kill you and I will kill your family, and you know I will," unquote. Also before meeting Grace, Kempson had a girlfriend who would hold knives to her throat, choke her and force her to perform sexual acts. He also stole $10,000 from her. For a total of 9 charges against these two women, Kempson was handed an 11.5-year prison sentence. But that only happened after Grace's murder. In the course of her date with Kempson, Grace messaged a friend of hers back home to say, "I click with him so well, he's an oil manager, he lives in a hotel." Without realising it, Grace was sending this message either before or after Kempson searched her bag, which she left behind when, at one point, she went to the toilet. Grace, of course, also didn't know that her date was no oil professional. Kempson had been sacked from his job in telesales, the last in a string of jobs, the very day of his date with Grace. In his initial police interrogation, Kempson appears to have tried to present himself not only as honest, but also as somewhat vulnerable. He gave the impression that possibly finding himself catfished by Grace would have made him feel threatened.
So have you heard of catfish?
No.
So catfishing is where someone uses your profile or uses your photos and pretends to be you and then meets and you're a completely different person.
Right.
And it's on Tinder, it's all about the way you look. And so if they use more endearing photos, you're more likely to swipe for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
How does meeting in a public place sort of protect you from meeting someone who's not as good looking as...
Well, there's security there. So if she wasn't who she said she was, at least in my mind I'd feel safe.
In lying to the police that he and Grace had parted ways at the end of their date, Kempson again suggested himself as wary and frightened of any harm.
You cross over and then you've parted company at around about 8 p.m.
Yeah.
And then you walk towards Queen Street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she walks towards space. Yeah, that's us.
Down there?
Yeah. So she's going that way and I'm going across the street. I go down Queen Street. I go down Victoria Street, straight down to the bottom, and then hang a left, and I head towards the viaduct.
You've kind of walked in a bit of a funny direction if you were planning to go to the viaduct. Is there a particular reason you were going to do that?
I feel safer down that way.
Kempson was once again spinning a web of lies that he knew both could and most likely would be easily unspun. The day after killing Jessie at his apartment at City Life Hotel, he even looked up at the CCTV camera in the lift. The camera had caught him and Grace when, after their date, the two took the lift to Kempson's floor. Kempson lived at the place and had, I believe, seen those cameras again and again. He had to know, I believe, that the camera had captured him with Grace. The Tinder date that Kempson went on the day after murdering Grace didn't go as well as Kempson's date with Grace. Kempson acted nervously and related confusing and contradictory information about himself to the woman on the date. At one point he mentioned that the police were looking for a body in the Waitakere Ranges, that's a mountain range with nearby woodland. He also stated that he knew someone who had accidentally killed a woman during rough sex. Unsurprisingly, the woman declined Kempson's subsequent invitation to go back to his with him. Before that date, a CCTV footage soon revealed to police Kempson had been to buy a suitcase and cleaning products. After his new Tinder date, Kempson went to buy a carpet cleaning machine, which, he told the staff at the hotel where he was living, which was being paid for by state benefits, was to clean red wine stains. The next day, Kempson went out to buy a shovel, and with this, he drove his rental car, which contained the suitcase in which he'd since put Grace's body, to the Waitakere Ranges. 2 hours later, he was seen power washing his rented car before returning it. The substance luminol showed up the blood in the carpets in Kempson's apartment that Kempson's prior vigorous cleaning had rendered invisible to the naked eye. It was, of course, the CCTV footage that earned police both their search warrant for Kempson's home and the right to arrest Kempson for murder in the first place, as they since had. When they came for him at City Life Hotel, they were rapidly able to catch up with him when, after spotting them, he took flight. In Kempson's second police interview, there was none of the casualness and confidence that Kempson had shown in his previous police interrogation. He'd already proven to the police that he was a liar. I don't know though if they were ready for his story that he had accidentally strangled Grace to death during sex after she requested him to squeeze her neck with his 2 hands.
Tell me what happened last Saturday.
She started talking to me about 50 Shades of Grey. We started having sex. At first it was just normal, and then she asked me if we could get into bondage, having, I guess, more violent sex. We ended up on the floor, and then she told me to hold her throat. So I went into the shower, and then all I remember is falling asleep in the shower. I need to stop. I need to go.
Kempson then claimed that the actions that he performed on realising that Grace was dead sprang from panic. If Grace's death really was an accident, why didn't Kempson call an ambulance or notify any other relevant parties? While arguably offensive, if nothing else, the internet searches that Kempson made in the minutes after Grace's death may not, in and of themselves, have incriminated him. Hottest fires, flesh-eating birds, and the Waitakere Ranges, the place where, 3 days after killing Grace, Kempson dumped her body, were amongst Kempson's online searches. So was hardcore porn. Even some of the other things that Kempson did, again in the first few minutes after he killed Grace, didn't necessarily prove that he had deliberately killed her. In the case of some of the intimate photos of Grace that Kempson took shortly after killing her, Kempson had moved Grace's body into the position in which he wanted her for the picture. Also, you may recall that less than 24 hours after killing Grace, Kempson went on another Tinder date. To my knowledge, Kempson was convicted of murdering Grace rather than of any lesser charge because of what Grace's autopsy revealed.
The defence case is that this is not a murder. And that's still what I say to you now, nothing has changed. It was an accidental death that took place in the context of sexual activities that, if done incorrectly by inexperienced and or intoxicated people, can go wrong.
In this case, to have killed Grace Millane, the defendant, gentleman over here at the back behind me, had to have had her under his grip, suffocating her, strangling her is probably the correct term, for a total of 5 to 10 minutes. At some point of which she lost consciousness and would have become under his hand hold, unconscious and limp and lifeless, and he had to carry on. And if that's not reckless murder in this country, ladies and gentlemen, somebody will have to explain to me what is.
In keeping with his unrepentant and deluded nature, Kempson not only showed no remorse at any point for murdering Grace, but also protested his conviction.
You're so full of You have no reason to convict me. You're full of
Just before this, the judge, Justice Simon Moore, affirmed that a report into Kempson's childhood showed that Kempson had been, as I quoted earlier, affected by various traumatic influences. I don't know that determined in any way the prison sentence that the judge gave Kempson, and I fancy it didn't. But apart from 17 years in prison, Kempson's sentence being, in my view, unduly lenient, that sentence also covers Kempson for his convictions against his 2 other victims. The 11.5 years that he got for the 9 convictions concerned are running concurrently to his 17 years. To me, that just isn't fair to Grace. If this video has gripped you, I recommend you to watch this one next. I'll meet you there.